The easiest way to discover who people really are is to give them a chance to look down on someone they believe has nothing. Rain hammered against the towering glass entrance of the Carter Grand Hotel in downtown Chicago as a tired man stepped out of an aging sedan with his 8-year-old son. His faded jacket was damp around the shoulders. His worn sneakers left wet footprints across the polished sidewalk, and the little boy beside him clutched a faded backpack almost as large as his small frame. Several guests glanced at them before quickly looking away. A valet hesitated for a second, then turned toward a luxury SUV arriving behind them instead. The father noticed, but said nothing. He simply smiled at his son. "Come on, Noah. Let's get inside before you catch a cold." Noah nodded quietly, rubbing his hands together as they entered the magnificent lobby filled with sparkling chandeliers, marble floors, and the soft melody of a grand piano. It looked like another world, one built for people who never had to worry about paying rent or stretching a grocery budget until payday. At least, that was exactly how Ethan Carter wanted everyone to see him today. No one in the hotel recognized the man standing beneath the dripping umbrella. No one greeted him by name. No one knew he had personally approved every chandelier, every painting, every polished stone inside the building. To them, he was simply another broke single father searching for work. Noah looked around with wide eyes before quietly asking, "Dad, are you sure this is going to work?" Ethan squeezed his son's shoulder gently. "We're here to learn something together." The boy lowered his voice. "Do you think people are nice because they're kind, or because they think someone is important?" Ethan paused for only a heartbeat before answering. "That's exactly what we're about to find out." The automatic doors slid shut behind them as the rain continued pouring outside. A front desk employee looked Ethan up and down before returning her attention to a wealthy couple checking in. Another associate walked past, carrying fresh flowers, without offering so much as a greeting. Ethan waited patiently, watching every interaction with calm eyes that missed nothing. Hidden inside the button of his old jacket was a tiny recording camera. His watch, replaced with a cheap plastic one, no longer revealed the billionaire who had spent 20 years building one of America's fastest-growing luxury hotel brands from a single neighborhood property into an empire stretching across the country. Today, none of that mattered. Today, money had disappeared. Status had disappeared. Influence had disappeared. Only character remained. Finally, after nearly 5 minutes, a young receptionist sighed dramatically before looking toward him. "Can I help you?" she asked with polite words but obvious impatience. Ethan smiled warmly. "I heard the hotel might be hiring. I'm looking for any honest job you have available. Housekeeping, maintenance, janitorial work, anything that lets me provide for my son." Before she could answer, a sharply dressed manager walked across the lobby, glanced briefly at Ethan and Noah, and frowned. What happened next would change far more than the future of one hotel. The manager stopped only a few feet away, his polished shoes reflecting the bright lobby lights as he looked Ethan up and down with open disappointment. His name tag read, "Derek Collins, General Manager." He folded his arms and forced a thin smile that never reached his eyes. "Sir, this is a luxury property. Are you here as a guest?" Ethan answered calmly. "No, sir. I was hoping to apply for a job. I have experience fixing buildings, cleaning, and doing maintenance. I will do whatever work is available." Derek glanced at Noah before letting out a quiet sigh. "You brought your son to a job interview?" Noah lowered his eyes, embarrassed, but Ethan rested a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "It is just the two of us," he said. "He stays with me whenever he can." Derek looked toward the front desk. "Human Resources is not going to be interested today." Ethan nodded politely. "I understand. but I would appreciate the opportunity to fill out an application." Before Derek could answer, a wealthy businessman entered through the revolving doors. Derek's entire expression changed in an instant. His shoulders straightened. His smile became warm. His voice became welcoming. "Good afternoon, Mr. Harrison. We have your executive suite ready." Ethan quietly watched the dramatic difference without saying a word. Hidden inside the tiny camera, every second was being recorded. Noah watched it too. After the guest disappeared into the elevator, the boy looked up at his father. He smiled at him. Ethan answered softly, "Yes, he did." "Why not us?" Ethan looked into his son's eyes before replying, "Sometimes people decide how much respect to give before they learn who someone really is." Derek turned back with obvious impatience. "Listen, we are fully staffed. Maybe try one of the older motels outside the city. They are usually looking for help." Ethan remained respectful. "Would you mind if I spoke with someone from Human Resources anyway? I drove almost 40 miles to get here." Derek checked his expensive watch. "I do mind. My staff has important guests to take care of." At that moment, a housekeeper pushing a supply cart slowed down after noticing Noah shivering slightly in his damp sweatshirt. She quietly removed a folded towel from the cart and handed it to the little boy with a gentle smile. "Here, sweetheart, dry your hair before you catch a cold." Noah looked surprised. "Thank you, ma'am." She smiled again before returning to work without asking for anything in return. Ethan noticed her name tag, Maya Brooks. He silently memorized it. It was the first genuine act of kindness they had received since walking through the front doors. Derek barely acknowledged what had happened. Instead, he pointed toward the exit. "I think we are finished here." Ethan gave a grateful nod to Maya before looking back at Derek. "Thank you for your time." He turned to leave with Noah, but neither of them noticed the security monitor above the lobby entrance. From another room deep inside the hotel, every conversation had already begun, reaching someone who believed this ordinary afternoon was about to become the most important day in the history of the entire company. Outside the hotel, the rain had slowed to a light drizzle as Ethan and Noah walked toward the parking garage without saying much. Noah finally broke the silence. "Dad, are we leaving?" Ethan smiled gently. "Not yet." He unlocked the old sedan and helped Noah climb inside before taking out an ordinary flip phone from the glove compartment. It looked inexpensive, but it connected through a private encrypted network known only to a handful of trusted executives. Ethan made one short call. "Phase 2 begins tomorrow morning," he said calmly. "No exceptions. Only one person knows my identity until this experiment is over." He ended the call before the person on the other end could ask another question. Noah watched quietly. "So, they are going to let you work here?" Ethan nodded. "Someone will make sure the paperwork reaches the right desk. Everything else will depend on how people choose to treat us." Early the next morning, Ethan and Noah returned to the Carter Grand Hotel before sunrise. The lobby looked different without the afternoon crowd. Housekeepers organized their carts, engineers checked equipment, restaurant employees prepared breakfast for hundreds of guests. Human Resources greeted Ethan with a temporary employment packet for a 30-day maintenance assignment. The paperwork listed him as Ethan Brooks, a recently unemployed maintenance technician searching for steady work while raising his son alone. No one questioned the file. Everything appeared completely ordinary. Derek glanced at the new employee list while sipping his coffee. The morning rushed forward with relentless speed as guests filled the hallways and elevators opened every few seconds. Ethan spent his first hours repairing loose door handles, replacing burned-out light bulbs, and answering maintenance requests that other employees preferred to ignore. He worked carefully, greeted everyone with respect, and never complained, even when the assignments became heavier than they needed to be. Derek seemed determined to test the newest employee at every opportunity. Whenever another maintenance worker finished a task, Derek somehow found 2 more waiting for Ethan. Room 1220 needs a leaking faucet fixed. Ballroom storage needs to be organized. The loading dock needs to be cleaned before lunch, he said, without looking up from his clipboard. Ethan simply answered, "Yes, sir," before moving on to the next job. Noah sat quietly in a small employee lounge with coloring books that Maya had found in the lost and found cabinet. During her break, she checked on him with a warm smile. "How are you doing today?" she asked. Noah smiled back. "My dad says every job matters." Maya nodded. "He's right. The people who quietly help others often hold everything together." A few minutes later, Ethan arrived to refill a maintenance cart. He noticed Maya carefully wiping fingerprints from a hallway window that most guests would never even notice. "You pay attention to every detail," he said. Maya laughed softly. "Someone has to. Guests remember how a place makes them feel, not just how it looks." Ethan quietly stored her words away. They sounded exactly like something he had once written in the company handbook years earlier. Yet somehow, they had survived only in the heart of a housekeeper. Upstairs, a wealthy guest accidentally dropped several shopping bags near the elevator. Without hesitation, Ethan stepped forward and helped gather the scattered items. The guest accepted the bags without making eye contact or offering a thank you before walking away. Another employee shook his head. "You wasted your time. People like that never notice workers like us." Ethan smiled gently. Helping someone is never a waste. The employee looked surprised by the answer. Later that afternoon, Derek spotted Ethan drinking water beside the service hallway after hours of non-stop work. "Break time is over," he called sharply. Ethan looked at the clock. He still had several minutes remaining, but quietly returned to work anyway. Noah watched the exchange from nearby, his small face filled with concern. Maya noticed it too. After Derek disappeared, she knelt beside Noah. "Your father is stronger than you think," she whispered. Noah nodded slowly. "I know. I just wish people could see who he really is." Maya smiled kindly, believing the boy meant his father was a good man beneath worn clothes. She had no idea how true those words really were. As the afternoon faded into evening, Ethan reviewed the hidden camera footage in private. Every smile, every cold glance, every act of kindness, and every moment of quiet disrespect painted a picture he never expected to see inside the company he had built with such pride. And deep inside, one painful question refused to leave his mind. If this was happening on the very first day, what had been happening for years, when nobody important was watching? 3 days passed, and the pattern never changed. Ethan arrived before sunrise, worked harder than anyone expected, and quietly accepted every assignment Derek placed on his schedule. The more dependable Ethan became, the more difficult his tasks seemed to grow. Heavy supply deliveries, emergency repairs, overflowing storage rooms, and last-minute requests somehow always found their way onto his list, while other employees finished their shifts on time. Yet he never argued. Every evening, Noah waited patiently in the employee lounge with a library book Maya had borrowed for him from a neighborhood reading program. She checked on the boy whenever she could, sometimes bringing him a carton of milk or a homemade sandwich without making a big deal about it. "Growing boys should not skip lunch," she would say with a gentle smile. Noah always thanked her politely. One afternoon, Maya noticed Ethan quietly sewing a loose button back onto Noah's jacket with a small travel sewing kit. "You know how to do that too?" she asked with a laugh. Ethan smiled. "When you are raising a child by yourself, you learn a little about everything." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "My mother used to say that love is usually found in the small things people never notice." Ethan looked at her for a moment. "Your mother sounds very wise." Maya's smile softened. She was. Before the conversation could continue, Derek walked into the hallway. His eyes immediately landed on Ethan. "Why are you standing around talking?" he demanded. Ethan calmly answered, "I just finished replacing the hallway lights." Derek handed him another work order without checking. "Then you can clean the maintenance workshop before the plumbing inspection arrives." Ethan accepted the paperwork with his usual quiet respect. Maya watched him walk away and frowned slightly. Something about the situation no longer felt fair. Later that afternoon, an elderly guest became confused while searching for the fitness center. Several employees hurried past because they were busy preparing for an executive conference. Ethan stopped what he was doing, smiled warmly, and personally walked the guest all the way across the property. The elderly man thanked him several times before disappearing through the glass doors. Ethan returned to find Derek waiting with crossed arms. "You were gone 15 minutes, Derek said coldly. "I was helping a guest," Ethan replied. "Your job is maintenance, not customer service." Ethan simply answered, "I believed helping him was the right thing to do." Derek shook his head and walked away without another word. From across the lobby, Maya had witnessed the entire exchange. She quietly whispered to herself, "Some people deserve better than the clothes they are wearing." That evening, after Noah had fallen asleep in the small apartment they had rented for the experiment, Ethan reviewed another collection of hidden recordings. Acts of generosity came from the employees with the smallest paychecks. The coldest behavior almost always came from those with the greatest authority. As he closed the laptop, one face remained in his thoughts. Maya never asked what Ethan could give her. She only kept asking whether he and Noah had everything they needed. Ethan realized that while he had come searching for the true character of his staff, someone inside his hotel was quietly revealing a character more valuable than anything money could ever buy. By the beginning of the second week, Ethan had stopped paying attention to the long hours. What mattered now was understanding the people behind the uniforms. Every hidden camera recording revealed another piece of the culture inside his company. Some employees quietly supported one another without expecting recognition. Others had learned to stay silent because speaking up often made their own jobs harder. One morning, while replacing a damaged ceiling panel outside a banquet room, Ethan overheard two employees talking in lowered voices. "Did you hear what happened to Carlos?" one whispered. "He reported missing inventory last month." The other glanced around nervously before answering. "Keep your voice down. Derek said the paperwork was wrong, and now Carlos works the overnight shift every weekend." Ethan remained focused on his work, but every word stayed with him. Missing inventory, wrong paperwork, overnight punishment. The pieces did not fit together. Later that afternoon, Ethan carried a box of replacement light fixtures through the service corridor when he noticed Derek speaking with an outside vendor near the loading dock. The conversation ended the moment Ethan came into view. Derek quickly folded several documents and slipped them into a leather portfolio. "What are you looking at?" Derek asked sharply. Ethan calmly shook his head. "Nothing, sir. I was just taking these supplies upstairs." Derek stepped aside but continued watching until Ethan disappeared around the corner. Something about the exchange felt unusually tense. That evening, Ethan quietly reviewed maintenance purchase records that every employee could access through the internal work terminal. He was surprised to discover repeated supply orders that were far larger than the hotel normally required. Expensive replacement equipment had been purchased, but much of it never appeared in the maintenance inventory. Ethan did not jump to conclusions. Instead, he carefully photographed the records using the hidden camera built into his identification badge. Across the hallway, Maya found him organizing storage shelves after his shift had officially ended. "You are still working?" she asked with concern. Ethan smiled. "I like leaving things better than I found them." Maya looked at the neatly arranged shelves and laughed softly. "Most people would have gone home an hour ago." Ethan placed the final toolbox into position. My father used to tell me that character is revealed when nobody is keeping score. Maya grew quiet for a moment. I think he raised a good man. She reached into her bag and handed Ethan a small container of homemade chicken noodle soup. I made too much for dinner. Please take this home for you and Noah. Ethan hesitated. I cannot take your dinner. Maya smiled warmly. You are not taking it. You are helping me avoid leftovers. Ethan accepted it gratefully, knowing she was giving from a heart that expected nothing in return. As she walked away, Derek appeared at the end of the corridor. His eyes moved from the soup container to Maya before settling on Ethan. He said nothing. He simply turned and continued walking. But the cold expression on his face made one thing clear. Someone had begun noticing the growing friendship between the quiet housekeeper and the maintenance worker. And whatever Derek was planning next, it was not going to make Ethan's experiment any easier. The following Monday began with unusual tension throughout the hotel. Luxury vehicles lined the entrance as executives prepared for one of the largest corporate conferences of the year. Every ballroom had been reserved. Every suite was occupied. Every employee understood that one mistake could affect the reputation of the entire property. Derek gathered the staff before the first guests arrived. Today is not the day for excuses, he announced. Everything must be perfect. His eyes settled on Ethan. Especially maintenance. If anything goes wrong, I will know exactly who to hold responsible. Ethan simply nodded. I understand. The morning passed smoothly until shortly before noon, when one of the banquet rooms suddenly lost power, minutes before an important presentation was scheduled to begin. Hotel employees rushed through the hallways while worried conference organizers searched for answers. Derek immediately pointed toward Ethan. You worked on that electrical panel yesterday? Go fix your mistake. Ethan inspected the equipment carefully. Within seconds, he realized the problem had not been caused by poor maintenance. Several circuit connections had been deliberately rearranged after his inspection, creating a preventable failure. He quietly restored the proper configuration, and the lights returned almost immediately. The presentation continued with only a brief delay. Instead of thanking him, Derek frowned. You should have prevented this from happening in the first place. Ethan remained calm. The equipment is working properly now. As employees returned to their duties, Ethan noticed something unusual near the service office. Derek quickly removed a folder from his desk and locked it inside a cabinet when another supervisor entered the room. A few minutes later, Maya quietly approached Ethan while carrying fresh linens. Are you all right? She asked. Ethan smiled. I'm fine. Maya hesitated before speaking again. You should know something. People have started blaming you for things that are not your fault. Ethan looked at her with quiet appreciation. Why are you telling me this? Maya answered honestly. Because I have worked here for 8 years, and I know the difference between someone who makes mistakes and someone who is being treated unfairly. Ethan thanked her softly. Before either of them could continue, Derek walked around the corner. Maya, he said sharply, why are you standing here instead of finishing your floor assignments? She answered respectfully. I was only checking whether the maintenance request had been completed. Derek looked from Maya to Ethan with obvious suspicion. You seem very interested in helping our newest employee. Maya met his eyes without raising her voice. I try to help everyone. Derek handed her another work order. Then help by doing your own job. After he walked away, Maya quietly apologized to Ethan, even though she had done nothing wrong. Ethan shook his head gently. You never have to apologize for being kind. That evening, as Ethan reviewed another collection of recordings and photographs, the evidence became impossible to ignore. Missing supplies, altered maintenance records, frightened employees, and conversations that ended whenever certain questions were asked all pointed toward a problem much larger than poor leadership. Somewhere inside his own hotel, someone had been protecting a secret for a very long time, and Ethan knew the moment to uncover the truth was getting dangerously close. The next morning, an unexpected announcement echoed through every department. All managers and employees were required to attend a mandatory staff meeting in the main ballroom at 4 o'clock that afternoon. No explanation was given. Derek appeared unusually confident as he walked through the hotel, reminding everyone that attendance was not optional. "Corporate wants to review operational performance," he told several supervisors with a satisfied smile. This should finally clear up a few problems. Throughout the day, Ethan continued working as if nothing had changed. He repaired a broken luggage cart, replaced damaged ceiling tiles, and helped a new employee locate a storage room after she became lost in the endless service hallways. Noah spent the afternoon quietly reading beside Maya during her lunch break. "Do you think your father likes working here?" she asked gently. Noah looked up from his book and smiled. "He likes learning about people." Maya laughed softly. "That is an interesting answer." Noah almost revealed more, but remembered the promise he had made. "My dad says every person teaches us something." Maya nodded. "Your father is teaching me something too." Noah looked curious. "What is that?" She smiled warmly. "That dignity has nothing to do with the clothes someone wears." A few hours later, Ethan received another work order from Derek, instructing him to clean the executive conference room immediately before the staff meeting. When Ethan entered the room, he noticed a large projector already connected to the hotel presentation system. Everything had been carefully prepared. Quietly, he plugged a small encrypted storage device into the control console for only a few seconds before removing it again. No one noticed the simple movement, but the presentation scheduled for later that afternoon had just been replaced. At exactly 4 o'clock, employees filled the ballroom. Housekeepers stood beside engineers. Restaurant staff gathered near the back. Front desk associates whispered to one another, while department managers occupied the front rows. Maya sat beside several co-workers, wondering why the atmosphere felt unusually tense. Noah quietly entered through a side door, holding Ethan's hand, before taking a seat in the last row. Derek stepped onto the stage first. "Thank you for coming," he announced confidently. "Corporate has requested a review of recent operational concerns. Fortunately, I have already identified the source of several problems." He turned toward Ethan. "Our newest maintenance employee has repeatedly created unnecessary complications, disrupted normal procedures, and distracted other members of the staff." Several employees exchanged uncomfortable looks. Maya immediately stood up. "That is not true," she said with calm determination. The ballroom became completely silent. Derek frowned. "Miss Brooks, sit down." She remained standing. "He has helped guests, worked harder than anyone here, and treated every person with respect. If someone is looking for the cause of our problems, they should look somewhere else." Derek's expression hardened. "Be careful. Defending him may cost you your job." Maya took a slow breath before answering. "If telling the truth costs me my job, then I can live with that." Ethan looked at her quietly, deeply moved by the courage she displayed, without expecting anything in return. At that exact moment, the ballroom lights dimmed. The giant screen behind the stage flickered to life on its own, and the first hidden recording began playing for every employee to see. The ballroom fell completely silent as the first video filled the giant screen. Employees watched themselves greeting wealthy guests with warm smiles, while ignoring others who appeared less fortunate. Another recording showed Derek assigning impossible workloads to Ethan, while praising employees who had done far less. Then came the footage from the loading dock, the maintenance office, and the service corridors. Conversations about missing inventory, altered records, and suspicious supply orders unfolded one after another. No dramatic narration was needed. The truth spoke for itself. Derek's confident expression slowly disappeared. He looked around the room, searching for someone to interrupt the presentation, but no one moved. Several department managers stared at the screen in disbelief. Others quietly lowered their eyes. When the final recording ended, the ballroom lights slowly brightened again. Ethan calmly stood from the last row, took Noah's hand, and walked toward the stage. Every step echoed through the silent room. Derek forced an uneasy laugh. What is this supposed to prove? Ethan reached the microphone and removed his temporary identification badge. Then he placed it gently on the podium. It proves that character does not change when someone becomes rich, he said calmly. It changes when people believe someone is poor. Several employees exchanged confused glances until the side doors opened. Members of the corporate board entered the ballroom, along with the company's chief legal officer and regional executives. They walked directly toward Ethan. Without hesitation, each greeted him respectfully. "Good afternoon, Mr. Carter." A quiet gasp spread through the room. Maya covered her mouth in complete surprise. Noah smiled proudly at his father. Derek's face lost all color as the truth finally reached him. Ethan Carter, the maintenance worker he had insulted for nearly 2 weeks, was the founder and owner of the entire Carter Grand Hotels organization. Ethan looked across the room with calm eyes. "I came here disguised as a struggling single father because my son asked me a simple question. He wanted to know whether kindness depended on money. I hoped the answer would make me proud." He paused before continuing. "Some of you did exactly that." He turned toward Maya. "Miss Brooks, from the first moment we arrived, you treated my son and me with dignity. You shared your food, your time, and your compassion without expecting anything in return. You reminded me of the values this company was built upon." Maya stood speechless, tears filling her eyes. Ethan smiled warmly. "Effective immediately. You are promoted to Director of Guest Experience and Employee Culture. Your job will be to help shape how every Carter Grand Hotel treats both guests and employees." The ballroom erupted into heartfelt applause. Ethan then faced Derek. "Leadership is not measured by authority. It is measured by integrity. Corporate investigators will complete a full review of the financial records and purchasing procedures discussed today. Until that process is complete, you are relieved of your management responsibilities." Derek quietly lowered his head, unable to respond. Ethan looked back at the employees one final time. "This hotel will no longer reward appearances. It will reward character. Every guest deserves respect. Every employee deserves dignity. Those principles are not optional. They are the foundation of everything we will become." Noah slipped his small hand into his father's and smiled. "Dad," he whispered softly, "now I know the answer." Ethan smiled back. "So do I." "Ddbeophi, so they hired you after all," he said with visible disappointment. "Do not expect special treatment because you have a child." Ethan smiled politely. "I am only asking for an honest chance." Derek handed him a faded maintenance uniform and an identification badge with temporary status printed across the bottom. "Your locker is downstairs. You report to whoever gives you instructions. Stay out of the guest areas unless someone tells you otherwise." Ethan thanked him sincerely. As they walked toward the employee hallway, Noah whispered, "You always tell me to be kind. How do you stay kind when people are not?" Ethan looked at his son before answering. "Because kindness says something about us. Their choices say something about them." Noah quietly nodded, holding those words close. Downstairs, Ethan entered the employee break room where conversations immediately became quieter. Some workers barely acknowledged him. Others simply continued eating breakfast. Maya looked up from her coffee and recognized the father and son from the previous afternoon. She smiled warmly. "Good morning. I'm glad you came back." Ethan smiled in return. "Thank you. Yesterday, Your kindness meant more than you probably realized. Maya shrugged gently. Everyone deserves a little kindness before starting a long day. She reached into her lunch bag and handed Noah a fresh apple. My son always packs extra fruit for school. I think he would be happy if someone else enjoyed one today. Noah accepted it with both hands. Thank you, Miss Maya. Across the room, Derek noticed the exchange. His expression hardened for only a second before he called everyone together. Listen carefully, he announced. Today we have several important guests checking in. I expect perfection from every employee. There will be no mistakes. Then his eyes settled directly on Ethan, especially from the new guy.